Stellaris 3.1, the Lem update, is coming September 14th. September 14th is the birthday of Stanislav Lem, after whom the update is named. It's a science fiction author. And here you can see an overview. Let's go through the overview and then we'll go also into the details later. So, selectable traditions, that's one highlight, which means you have a couple of traditions that you can select to fill all the 7 tradition slots that you have, right? So you have, at the moment, that's not too many of the traditions, but for example, if you have just a standard, I don't know, democracy, you have, let's say, 10 or 11 traditions that you can select from, and then of these you select 7. You might know that you have different traditions, for example, for a hive mind or for a normal government, and so on. And this opens up the way to share some of them and to introduce some new ones. So tradition trees are no longer hard-locked. Instead, you can now choose which trees you wish to pursue in a playthrough. This includes a reworked UI as well as several new trees which allow further customization of empires. Then we have new tradition trees. They have been added to both the Nemesis and Apocalypse DLCs, as well as a new mercantile tradition in the base game. Additionally, players may now choose 7 trees from up to 11 total tradition trees with all DLCs. So there's some variation, and I think there will be more added, and probably modders are at it to even add more tradition trees, because there was early access for modders. So maybe something is coming out right now already. They're working on it right now, but they will be ready with the 14th, I guess. Then the Plantoid Species Pack has some changes, as we all may have seen. So, reproducing by budding, playing as phototrophic species that relies partially on energy or background radiation with radiotropic as food. Using the catalytic processing civic, which the manufacture of alloys from food or convert ideal planets into organic paradises with the idyllic bloom civic, so you don't have to choose the Gaia Ascension perk. Then the Humanoid Species Pack also gets upgraded. Play as the remains of an ancient clone army with a new clone army origin. That's very, very exciting. Who solely rely on ancient cloning to reproduce, and you only have a limited number of them. Or devote your empire to becoming a masterful crafter, or play as a species of decadent pleasure seekers. Then the Necrits also gets updated with reanimators. The renamed reanimated armies can embrace the afterlife by reanimating more targets, including some Leviathans, and enemy troops defeated in battle. So after you defeat a Leviathan, you can get them to use them. That's pretty crazy, right? Undead Leviathans. The Death Cult Civic and the Necrophage origin have also been rebalanced. Then there's some other changes. Rebalancing, restructuring of some civics and origins. Quite a lot you'll see, and as well as many bug fixes and AI improvements. And that's actually the other changes. Is actually, I mean, that's the content. But that is the core work. The most work went into the other changes, especially the bug fixes by the new Custodian Team, the self-proclaimed bug hunters of Stellaris, that refine the content and remove bugs. That is what they want to do. Let's watch a part of this where they talk about the features, right? So it's about the Custodian Team, and then they want to bring updates to the game every 3 months. So for now they had 6 months to make a head start, and now they want to refine it every 3 months. So let's see about the features.
The Lem update will include a reworked core feature called selectable tradition trees, as well as many improvements to our existing species packs. Lots of balance improvements, quality of life upgrades, and bug fixes. Let's dive straight in and see what's coming to our species packs. For the Humanoid Species Pack, we are introducing the new Clone Army origin, in which your entire species will be clones. Gifted with outstanding talent in warfare, your empire will have to decide between facing the galaxy as they are, or delving deep into their past to uncover the secret of their creation. We have also added 2 new civics to the Humanoid Species Pack. The The Mastercrafters Civic will exchange your artisans for artificers, which produce trade value and engineering research in addition to consumer goods. The Pleasure Seeker Civic will allow your population to drown themselves in hedonism, granting increased happiness at the cost of higher consumer goods upkeep. For the Planetoid Species Pack, we are introducing 2 new civics and 3 new species traits. The Idyllic Bloom Civic will let you construct Gaia-seeder buildings, which progressively improve your planet until it becomes an idyllic
That's
Gaia
pretty
world.
great in my opinion.
The Catalytic Processing Civic, available to all types of Empire, exchanges metallurgists for catalytic technicians, which turn food into alloys.
Also
The
pretty
new
great.
planetoid traits are available to all fungoid and planetoid species. The Phototropic trait will exchange 50% of your pop's food upkeep with energy upkeep. The Radiotrophic trait, which functions similarly to Phototrophic, and will additionally make your pops ideally suited to living on tomb worlds, granting them faster pop growth and waiving their energy upkeep there.
But still pretty strong.
The budding trait will allow your pops to bud off new pops and reproduce using organic pop assembly. For the Necroid Species Pack, the Reanimated Army Civic, which is now simply known as Reanimators, offers more interesting choices for reanimating targets. For instance, Ether Drakes, the Void Spawn, and the Tianki Matriarch are all now on the menu. The Necrophage origin has been reworked to be compatible with hive minds. And the Death Cult membership now comes with vastly improved perks. For machine lovers with the Megacorps expansion, Rogue Servitors can now take their Ecology Ascension perk and create vast ecumenopolises for their biotrophies.
As of Lem, tradition trees are no longer hard-locked. Instead, you can now choose which tree you wish to pursue in a playthrough.
And that's very exciting.
For this, we have reworked the UI and added several new trees to give you more choices. Owners of Nemesis will get access to the Subterfuge tradition tree, which will increase your espionage capabilities, make you a harder target to crack for your enemies, and grant you bonuses if you succeed at, or your enemies fail at, an espionage operation.
That's one very exciting one for roleplay.
Will get access to the Unyielding tradition tree, which will vastly increase the capabilities of your defensive starbases and your capacity to build more of them.
It's really cool for
Furthermore,
isolationist empires.
Lem also contains many bug fixes and several AI improvements to improve the overall quality of Stellaris. We hope you like this brief overview of the 3.1 Lem update, and we'll see you on the forums and socials.
Diving into the details, the free features, buffing the backlog is the first part of it. So buffing the backlog is buffing all the species pack specs, and also, as you can see here, some of the expansions also. So Plantoids. Plantoids has really a lot added and changed. Idyllic Bloom Civic added, can be used for Plantoids and Fungoids, gives the ability to transform ideal worlds into Gaia worlds. Ideal worlds is the type of world that you choose for your home world. You can transform these into Gaia worlds by building a building that you can upgrade a couple of times, and once the building is finished, the transformation to Gaia world is finished, and then the building gets removed again from the planet. And this means you don't have to choose the Ascension perk for transforming worlds into Gaia worlds. You can just transform them into normal world, into your ideal world, and then can make a Gaia world out of it with Idyllic Bloom. So it's a very powerful civic, a really, really powerful civic. Added phototrophic, radiotrophic, and budding species traits for plantoid and fungoid species. Phototrophic, radiotrophic reduce your cost in food for your pops and replace it, 50% of it, with energy. So that's something really cool. And in case of radiotrophic, it gets replaced with radiation, and the radiation is on Tomb World, so it's basically halves your cost. So if you take radiotrophic together with Tomb World origin, you have a massively reduced need for pop upkeep. And budding species traits. Budding is giving you pop assembly very early on for plantoid and fungoid species. Now before, you can usually assemble pops and not rely on normal pop growth. You get that via budding. Added catalytic processing civics for all government types. Catalytic processing gives you the possibility to produce alloys from food. Mavir Caretaker's prescripted empire now uses a Dillic Bloom civic in place of inward perfection. Very interesting, also fitting the Caretaker story. Owning the plantoid species pack adds the phototrophic trait to the new Baol in the events, and the plantoid species pack also adds the radiotrophic trait to the Nivlag. And the humanoids. Added Masterful Crafters Civic. Masterful Crafters gives you artificers instead of artisans that add a little bit of research and trade value to your consumer goods production. So there's a little bonus of that. Engineering research. Pleasure Seekers makes it possible to get more amenities and opens up the way for a special lifestyle accessible to your core species at least. You can basically waste consumer goods for powerful effects. Added clone army origin. We've seen that. That's a really powerful origin. Very challenging probably because you're limited to a number of clone producing factories and that you can choose if you want to leave them as a ruling class or you replace them later on. They're very, very good at fighting. Because you have clone army pops basically. And the Synthetic Dawn has something added. Rogue Servitors can now take the Archaeology Project Ascension perk and restore relic worlds to Ecumenopolises as well. Quite powerful. Ecumenopolises owned by Rogue Servitors have sanctuary archaeologies capable of housing biotrophies, and they give them a little bit of more of production than usual. It's very, very interesting, especially Unity-wise. Apocalypse added a new Unyielding tradition tree. Unyielding is a tradition tree very good for defense. So if you want to play Isolationist or be on your own, Unyielding is definitely a good choice. Megacorp's subversive cults no longer have access to the Temple of Prosperity, instead gaining the subversive shrine. That's even better for that criminal Megacorp gameplay. Ancient Relics added 3 new archaeology sites for ancient relics. Yeah, Subversive Shrine also adds crime to the plants affected. Extra crime. 3 new archaeology sites for ancient relics. Ooh, that's very nice. Well, that's the like that's the cream of the crop, so to say. Lithoids extended the Rock Brain Anomaly event chain for certain Lithoid empires. Nice. Necroids reanimated army civic has been renamed to Reanimators. Their empires can now reanimate biological leviathans, among other things. So you go there with your zombie space drakes, and enabled necrophage origin for hive minds as well. That's a thing. Wow. I want to see that. I want to play that. Nemesis added a new Subterfuge tradition tree. Subterfuge is giving you more possibilities to spy on other empires. Use these mechanics to the fullest, and if you want to play a spy game, that's probably the thing to go for. The absolute best. Selectable traditions now. Now you have 7 active trees, and you can choose which traditions you want to have from usually 11 civics, as they said in the video. Rework the traditions interface to make them selectable, allowing empires to have access to more than 7 different trees, but you have to select from them. Adaptability, synchronicity and versatility traditions are now their own tradition trees, rather than being tradition swaps. Diplomacy and adaptability are both available to almost everyone and are no longer mutually exclusive. Added a new mercantile tradition tree to the base game, especially good of course for megacorps. Other things, updated the star system layout of Alpha Centauri to be more scientifically accurate. Updated the visuals of the Sea of Consciousness star system. You can now queue construction of starbase buildings that require certain modules before these modules have completed construction, such as, for example, the Off-World Trading Company. Ah, that's so useful. Not to forget that anymore. Void Dweller empires with species that eat food now start with a 100 food stockpile instead of none. Makes sense, right? Added 2 new archaeology sites to the base game. Then the balance changes. Oh, that's gonna be a lot. I expect that to be... Yeah, it's a lot, but it's not as lot as the bug fixes. Bug fixes are the most. So let's get into it. Let's see what gets balanced. Sectors released as vassals from megacorps are now released as oligarchies with a merchant guild civic and 1 or 2 random civics, depending on their technologies. So they're not becoming megacorps themselves, but rather oligarchies with merchant guild civic. The Federation Science Challenge now takes greater account of Empire's relative technological standing when picking a winner. Yeah, because why is that done with the megacorps? Because you don't want like that they put their own branch offices everywhere, right? So so that they do not act as competition to the original megacorps. When a reanimator country defeats an organic army in battle, they have a 1 in 3 chance of creating a new undead army. And that was also needed to have that, because the reanimated armies were becoming kind of obsolete by late mid-game. So now they are no longer. Reanimators no longer need to research any text before they can build their necromancy building. The necromancy building now gives 2 necromancers instead of 1. They produce 2 extra society and physics, but 1 fewer defensive armies. So they have a use besides. That's always good. Increased chance of pops escaping necrophage purging to 25%. So not that strong. They're getting buffed, but they're also getting nerfed a bit. Reworked the Void Dweller trait to now provide a pop output bonus of 15% on habitats and a pop output penalty of -15% on non-artificial worlds. Ring worlds have neither a bonus nor a penalty. Additionally, they have a -30% happiness penalty on non-artificial worlds. Remove the stability modifier from a memorialist building and added it to memorialist job instead. Death cult sacrifice bonuses now depend to a far greater degree on the percentage of your population you have just put to death rather than on the sheer number of sacrifices. They will generally be far more impactful in the early game. Death cult number of mortal initiate jobs from upgraded buildings reduced to 2 and 3 from 3 and 5, as the demographics can usually not sustain massacring 5 pops per planet every decade. Yeah. Because of the new pop system, of course. Beacon of Liberty gave 15% produced unity, now also gives -15% Empire Sprawl from pops. Much needed upgrade for that thing. Imperial Cult gave 1+1 Edict Cap, now gives +2 Edict Cap. That's now one of the strongest, really, that cult. Idealistic Foundation. But it's endgame. It's rather endgame or midgame, not early game. Idealistic Foundation gave +5% happiness, now gives +10% happiness. Yeah, bland, but a little bit more effective now. It's good. Environmentalist gave -10% consumer goods upkeep, now gives -20% consumer goods upkeep. So get ready for the environmentalist pleasure seekers. Parliamentary system gave +25% faction influence, now gives +40% faction influence. That's also a much needed buff. I really like it. Efficient bureaucracy gave +10% admin cap, now gives +20% admin cap. Yeah, seriously, no one used efficient bureaucracy, but it was very effective in AIs. Nationalistic Zeal gave -10% war exhaustion gain and -10% claim cost, now gives -20% war exhaustion gain and -15% claim cost. Same thing here. It's just a good change. Functional Architecture gave -10% building and district cost, -10% building and district upkeep, and +1 building slot, now gives 2 building slots and -15% building and district cost. Which is really good. I mean, it gives more of a head start. And that's something good. Civics generally should give you a head start, so you can choose them as an option at the start. And there's of course still late game civics. Something like happiness maybe belongs to them. Upkeep reduction removed. Subspace F-hubs gave 15% more naval capacity and now gives 20% ship speed and also gives plus 15% naval capacity. 20% ship speed is very, very good because you cannot get that via tech really. So it's something that will help you most in late game when you have big wars and move around. It's super good. Divided Attention gave plus 10% admin cap, now gives plus 20% admin cap as the other change. Constructabot, just as Functional Architecture gave minus 10% building district cost, minus 10% building district upkeep, and 1 building slot, now gives minus 15% building district cost, 2 building slots, and upkeep reduction removed. Slaver guilds reduced enslaved population from 40 to 35%. Yeah, slaves were a little bit too strong, so they're nerfing it a little bit. And that's good. Indentured assets reduced enslaved population from 40 to 35%. Technocracy. Yeah, another one of these. They wanted to bring down science boost strategies a little bit because they thought too strong. So they added 1 consumer goods upkeep to scientist jobs that create unity because of technocracy. Then non-homicidal necrophages no longer start with 2 extra pops. Purifier and swarm variants keep it, since they lose a few pops during the purge. Necrophages can now only have stone, bronze or iron age primitives as their guaranteed planets. These planets are also guarded by a few more defense armies than they usually would be. Like, they usually had, I think, maximum of 1 Stone Age army, so total cakewalk. And now you have to produce a little bit more. The Necrophage Elevation Chamber no longer provides a planet stability bonus. Reduced slaver guilds, so that's a nerf, that's a big nerf. Not a big maybe, but it's definitely a nerf. Not for the early game, but for the later game. Reduced slaver guilds and indentured servitude slave percentages from 40 to 35%. We had that already. Open markets diplomatic tradition now moved to mercantile. Insider trading diplomatic tradition now moved to mercantile. So mercantile becomes really the trading and money tradition, and diplomatic gets something else. Secured shipping, diplomatic tradition removed, effect moved to mercantile traditions. Here we go. And there we have the 3 new traditions for diplomacy. Diplomatic networking, working, direct diplomacy, and eminent diplomats. Really looking forward to something really diplomatic with impact. Bulwark of Harmony tradition moved to unyielding, replaced with harmonious directives, which increases etiquette by +1. It's quite cool. It's quite cool to get that via tradition too. Mind and Body Harmony tradition now also increases leader skill cap by +1. Kinship Harmony tradition effect on demotion time increased from -25% to -75%. Now it has a real big impact. Supremacy adoption effect no longer increases starbase capacity by +2, but instead increases naval capacity by +20. I like the old one better, but it's also okay. I mean, it's good at the start. Naval capacity is good at the start. Starbase capacity is good in the late game, so it's a buff for the adoption effect. And it makes sense. Trade policies are now locked behind the adaptive economic policies mercantile tradition. Alright, I mean, so traditions will unlock policies. That's nothing completely new, but it's a concept that will get more often used, I think, also in coming developments. Rebalance pop costs for Caravaneer events to better reflect pop growth changes. Rebalance pop rewards and costs of multiple events to better reflect pop growth changes. Reduce the pop requirement for Executive Retreat and Xeno Outreach Agency to better reflect the current pop system. Yeah, there's a lot of these adaptations to the now working pop system. Prosperity Traditions Finisher no longer provides merchant jobs or gestalt jobs, but rather increases planet stability by +5 and pop resource output by +5%, which is good and easy change. Reworked and rebalanced how some rare events are fired. For example, repeatedly entering and exiting systems will no longer eventually guarantee certain events. Warm! Yeah, I mean, on the one hand it's good because it was so ridiculous. On the other hand, it was also cool that you could just get this thing. right? If you wanted to live with a warm, you could just seek for it long enough and you will eventually get it. Tweaked carrying capacity formula to make housing usage modifiers more useful again. Instead of taking total housing, it now takes total pops plus free housing. It's cool. Reduce the benefit orbital stations and starbase constructions receive from technologies when gathering resources. Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Slight note. Planetary designations that provided build cost modifiers now instead provide upkeep modifiers. The urban world designation now reduces the upkeep of buildings and districts instead of affecting industrial district cost. Refinery designation now increases production rather than reducing upkeep. Added an industrial world planetary designation that provide reduced benefits to both alloy and consumer good production and do not shift jobs. The existing industrial world is renamed a factory world. Yeah. There's a lot more details in specializing your worlds and transforming your worlds, as we'll later see, into incrementally possible. And that's very cool. Automatic planetary designation selection will no longer be quite so sure that refinery worlds are what you really need more than anything else right now. Yeah, everything was a refinery world, right? The Shattered Ring starting segment is now a size 25 habitable world with normal districts, housing, generated trade, industrial and farming districts present will convert to ring world districts at a 5:1 ratio when the ring world is restored. And they will have special mining districts. Buildings and districts that add biotrophy jobs no longer add to carrying capacity, since having biotrophies that use no housing will now increase carrying capacity already. Cool. Reduced exorbitant fees for using Golden Rule Federation elections. For example, the money you get from disturbing or appropriating the pot now more closely corresponds to the pot. Industrial districts now convert into foundry ecologies and factory ecologies depending on the planetary designation. So before you transform into an ecumenopolis, manually choose what you want to have. If you don't designate it manually into one of these, it will be split. The final level of the capital building now unlocks all 4 corporate building slots, up from 3. Judgment Corps Domination Tradition no longer increases crime prevention, but rather makes enforcers produce 1 unity. Domination Tradition Finisher no longer increases monthly influence gain by +1, but rather increases admin cap by 20% for all empires, which is pretty good. But yeah, I mean, you usually don't need so much influence anymore. So it's good that this has another effect. Colonial Viceroy's Domination Tradition now also increases monthly influence by 0.5 to make up for that. Sacrificial temples are now limited to 5 per planet. Halve the minerals from mining the interloper. Replace the mineral deposit on the irreparable damage with an engineering research deposit. Rogue Servitor Industrial Habitat Districts will no longer provide artisan jobs, but can still access the jobs by activating the Factory Habitat Colony designation. Cave Cleaner is now a worker tier job rather than a specialist job. Gas Plant Engineer job is now less attractive. Everyone wanted to be a gas plant engineer. Racket Destroyer deal cost increased from 200 minerals to 2,000 minerals. Hive mines are now able to purge other hive pops again. Makes kind of sense, right? Because with an enemy hive, what can you do? Added so you can terraform a tomb world to a Gaia world directly if you have the correct prerequisites. Yeah, before you had to go 2 steps. The same was with machine worlds and stuff. Made it so that empires can't get worthless buildings from reverse engineering arcane technologies. Which is extremely performance and stability. Very important for many people, especially multiplayer. Added a sanity check to prevent a possible crash when closing the game during gameplay. Extend the timeout for client to respond to the start game message, so they wouldn't be kicked out of the session by the host. That's nice. Okay, fix an out-of-sync error on hot join. Great. Significantly reduce the freeze caused by spawning the L-gate. Slightly reduce the performance burden of the auto-migration system. All very, very nice and necessary. Such few points, but such a big impact on a lot of the community. UI. That's my pet peeve, really. If you have a good UI, even a bad game can be fun. So changed humming ambient sound in main menu to ambient category and volume. Nice. Added indications in the UI. Purge tooltip in species rights and planet view as to how likely pops are to escape your current purge type, so long as the chance is not 0% or 100%. There is no longer a close button on diplomatic events, so you can no longer accidentally close important decisions by hitting escape to, for example, save. Okay. In the pop selection, yeah, okay, so you don't lose these things, right? That's good. In the pop selection within the planet interface, you can now see how much of their output comes from buildings, such as mineral processing centers, which increase mineral output by lump sums, as well as how much of their upkeep is from edicts. Very good to be able to see that all. The rise job modifiers have been improved to indicate gestalt alternatives and similar variations. The left-hand navigation bar will remain in a collapsed state when the mouse is left hovering after making a menu choice. Okay, fixed, so it's possible to click the lock icon when left bar nav bar is in expanded state. Switched the presentation order of alloys and consumer goods in various UI contexts to match the order in the top bar. Added clearer information on when you'll next be able to use certain espionage operations in tooltips. That's very helpful. Added information on when the next necrophage elevation ceremony will be on their elevation buildings tooltips, so you don't bring their necrophytes elsewhere, right? Corrected several errors in the tooltips for setting or unsetting a forced assembly species, specifically in the amount of assembly progress you will lose. Fixed UI for Operation Sabotage Starbase. The game will now tell you that the game is ready to start in the hot joining interface, where previously there would be no message after synchronizing game. Which is good. Food from deposits should now be possible to see on the map. Added hyperlane opacity slider defaulting to 0.3. That's cool. I mean, these graphical options, nice. Clone VATS building is now sorted under pop assembly in the construct building list. Cool. Tweaked colors of restricted systems names to be slightly more readable. Everything that's more readable is good. Then we have AI. Not that many changes, but let's see what they are. The AI will now cancel espionage operations for which it lacks the available spy power and infiltration level. Very good. AI can now build 4 to 6 construction and science ships depending on how well it is doing financially, meaning some empires will expand and have their mining stations quicker than others. The AI should now upgrade its fleets during peacetime. AI now waits 15 years to fully take over the player. Interesting, interesting. So you have 15 years. Then improve AI human takeover behavior. No naval bonus from difficulty in takeover. AI does not colonize after takeover. Now that's all for multiplayer. AI does not destroy buildings after takeover. Stops building armies after takeover. Stops building starbases, starbase modules after takeover. AI stops buying and selling pops after takeover. Then in the code, AIs taking over for the human player can now take into account when deciding on buildings to construct. The AI now considers building caps when deciding on what buildings to construct. Remove the upkeep check for approximation because of locking itself out of building certain stuff in deficit. So it can also do some deficit spending now. Scripts, reduced amount of jobs allowed to build new stuff. Increased scores for deficit, focus, and an amenities building weights. Reduced weight for pop buildings. Economic plans now favor less research and more stability and economic balance. Added a job weight for low income for artisan jobs. Increased job weight for technicians for low income situations. Reduced low income threshold for minor jobs. Economic plan fixed for Hive and Gestalt. AI now cares more about energy and alloys. Added a building limit define. The AI can now propose targeted galactic community resolutions even if they do not have terrible or excellent opinion of their target. Aha. Change the way that AI weight of galactic community resolutions is affected by opinion towards target and proposer, so that it is a multiplicative value instead of additive. Increase the amount of saved credits. Allow 10% over admin cap for the AI. Do not build starbases on income below 100. Consolidate economic plans and better sub-plans. Instead of economic plans based on time passed, the AI now checks its own economic situation in order to adapt its strategy. As in, if I'm low on consumer goods, I will not build research facilities. Wow, that's kind of an intelligent thing, right? That's wise, making the AI wise. Good things coming for the AI. Now we come to modding, which is exciting in itself, that there's a lot of modding changes that will make modding hopefully easier and more stringent, more logical, more conclusive. After that we'll come to bug fixes, which is the biggest part of it. We'll go through everything. So modding, variables changes. In places where you use the value of a variable, I cannot explain too much about modding because I'm not a modder, right? So you can understand that a bit, but in the end, I'll just read that to you. With the bug fixes, I'll do more commentary, but I cannot do much commentary here. So in places where you use the value of a variable, you can now generally use trigger, any simple value trigger, or scope, another scope my variable, or a combination of the two. Capital scope trigger numpops would work. Made variables work in the last few scopes they didn't previously work in. Overhauled how triggers using a single numerical value work. You can now do the following with them. Check against another scope for which the trigger would be valid. For example, numpops is from owner. Check against the variable in the current scope, for example numpops my saved variable. Save the value the trigger would return true at, for example with is operator as a variable, for example export trigger value to variable is brackets open, trigger is numpops variable is myvar, brackets close, sets myvar to 61 if the current empire, 61 pops. For triggers using the brackets, you can specify perimeters. In perimeters is brackets. So you set a couple of perimeters inside these brackets. Enabled the use of variables for values in effects using a single numerical value work, for example add experience, is myvar. Changed format of check variable arithmetic considerably to let you specify multiple parameters, including, for example, multiple add parameters. Added round variable to nearest effect in case you don't want to set something to 47,152 or 0.152. Yeah, probably round variable. Added a time multiplier parameter to add modifiers so that you can multiply your number of days, months, years by a variable. Added ordered script lists so you can order, say, all playable countries by the number of pops and run an effect on the one with the most, least, or, for example, third most pops. Enabled use of variables in all modifier is brackets open factor is x brackets close calculations. Triggered resource tables can now take a multiplier is variable parameter. For example, produces brackets open multiplier is myvar energy is 100 brackets close. You can now use variables for the count parameter in count, country, and the like. Fixed multipliers for add modifier and country scope. it worked elsewhere fine, just not in country scope. Simplified check, set, add, multiply, for etc. variable to use a new format for value. For example, you don't need to specify is brackets for complicated things anymore. In fact, that won't work, but should instead use dot scoping. Whatever that is. Other things. Consolidated has non-swapped tradition and has swapped tradition triggers into a single has active tradition trigger. Added define for maximum allowed number of tradition category selections. Added potential trigger to tradition categories. Added num research text and fixed the bug where num repeatable text wouldn't count you researching multiple levels of the same tech. Special projects can now take triggered descriptions. Fix the AI being able to pick is dialogue only event options and therefore escape the consequences of an event. What? Defensive armies now have a pop spawn chance so that you can control a bit better which ones are spawned. Added save detail AI build plan console command. Added reroll random effect which can be used in cases where random lists would return the same result multiple times but don't use in places where the random is used in tooltips as the result in the tooltip is likely to be wrong. Adoption and finisher tooltips of tradition trees are now automatically generated. Added ability to specify a numerical empire limit for buildings and have it shown nicely in tooltips like the planet cap. Corrected spelling of is for colonizable and colonizable planet. Added triggered pop modifiers for species traits. Added defense platform modifier to starbases. Save AI build plan details now also saves the decisions to AI.log. Added fire and forget parameter to resolutions. Added num sapient pops trigger for planet and country scopes. The clone leader effect now copy the event leader and immortality flags. Added parameter in starbase levels to exclude them from trade collection so that the trade collection range modifiers in country scope can be useful. Added country hostile claim influence cost mult modifier. Added starbase defense platform capacity mult modifier. Colony type icons now take keys instead of numbers. Added num tradition categories trigger. Created a triggered planet modifier that only works for pop growth speed. Added on actions for on tradition picked and on ascension perk picked. Added set visited effect to make you able to see a solar system you have never visited before. Also fixed the no case of set survey. Added triggered desk is in brackets for districts to override the base district, not to add an extra line to the tooltip as in the current triggered desk. Added set saved date effect, added script flags with effects and triggers as usual to all scopes missing them. You can now use scripted log in the names of button effects. Added hostile type difficulty add and hostile type difficulty mult modifiers. Added hostile category difficulty add and hostile category difficulty mult modifiers. Added espionage hostile operation difficulty add and espionage hostile operation difficulty mult modifiers. Added espionage hostile operation cost add and espionage hostile operation cost mult modifiers. Added use army names from to army types, works like use ship names from in ship sizes. Added a modifier diplo action acceptance add that increases AI acceptance of all diplomatic actions. Added on building downgraded on action. Set name now works on sectors and wars. Added add blocker effect, which unlike add deposit will let you have control over which deposit the blocker will block. Rephrased pop can live on planet trigger to can live on planet, working in either pop or species scope and taking a planet event target rather than a boolean. Added triggers is starbase building module and is starbase building, checking if the scoped database is building a specific item. Added trigger starbase buildable is in queue before to check if a buildable is in queue before another. Scope is starbase. Split has system trade value trigger into that and fix the case where it would return the wrong number. Has collected system trade value and has collected system trade value. Has uncollected system trade value. Whoa. Fixed various issues with setting species archetype restrictions for government elements, civics and authorities so that it is now checked in every case and can be used safely. The effect change species characteristics can support added trait, remove trait, and added traits at start of list flag. Added effects to set a country's ruler title or heir title to a specified value and to restore them to default. Added should remove response message when not possible property for diplomatic actions to remove response messages of the diplo action type if the possible check fails. Trigger docs has been split between its components, which are now in their own subdirectory. Modifiers are now also in their own log file. Fix the bug where using a solar system as a location on various effects, for example, enable special project, would not work, but also not give an error log message. It now sets the location, the primary star in that system. Added documentation for certain advanced scripting functionalities in scripted effects, 99 advanced documentation.texts. Added get fossil and get fossil plural lock keys for species. Added civics and origin, species class condition. Old species requirement is now called species archetype instead. Added Galcom member and council member to script lists. Replace AI define resolution weight opinion factor with multiple other defines. Replaced use of icon frame in army types with sprites. Changed observation outpost into a scope change rather than a trigger effect. This means it can be used on the right hand side of effects and triggers. For example, exists is observation outpost. On the other hand, limit no longer works on it. Will no longer refer to every observation outpost in the country from country scope. Removed every random mining station research station, as you should use mining station research station instead, more efficient. Added on action on country released in war. Logistic pop growth ceiling, required pop growth scale and required pop assembly scale defines have been removed as they've been replaced by sliders in galaxy generation. Traits can now be restricted to a species class, for example fungoid. Remove need for bombardment stances to use icon frame. The game will now look for a sprite called GFX Planet Modifier Ground Support plus Key. Planet classes now also use icon is sprite instead of icon frame. Removed hard coding of species archetype behavior. Relevant happiness and growth modifiers are now automatically generated. Note a few of them have changed names slightly, and robotic is yes has been shifted from species classes to species archetypes. Added on star system destroyed on action, called at the start of destroy star system. Added orbital station script list for country and system scopes. The detail view shown when clicking ambient objects will no longer cut off text longer than a couple of lines. Removed count diplotize, as it is the same as count relation but used older code. Removed count armies, as it is the same as count owned army and count planet army but with older code. Removed use of icon frame in non-starbase ship sizes. It now only does something on starbases. Other ship sizes use icon is key, which will look up several individual sprites. Modders can therefore add new ships without overwriting the sprite sheet DDS file. Allowed you to define trigger descriptions for jobs and buildings. Ambient object descriptions can now take lock.getProperty commands. Added game rule should force decline species, which if true will set a species to decline on a planet regardless of purge status or overcrowding. Fixed on army killed in combat so it can't be called multiple times per army. In certain cases where one would use mult in weight scripting, you should now use factor. The game will warn you on startup in error.log. Added has climate trigger for planets. Added abort trigger for event chains, the ones in common event chains. Fixed issues with scopes when using finish site and finish current stage archaeology effects. Added get remnant name, get species remnant name for cases where you really want your dead robot not to leave a skeleton. Improve the randomness of random functions within while loops and every X loops. The after effect in events will no longer fire when an is dialog only option is picked, making it fire multiple times for the same event. And finally we come to the big, the beastly, the bug fixes. The Custodian Team was really made for bug fixing. That's the main thing. So let's see what they have in store for us. Fixed some cases where someone else opening the L cluster would cause the related situation log entry to stick around forever. Archaeology sites and espionage operations now correctly use the difficulty of the current stage rather than that of the last stage. Interesting. Reinforcement fleets now get removed when destroyed. Fixed colony ships not being affected by ship construction modifiers. What? Good. Fix the number of inconsistent ID3 tags in the soundtrack DLC's MP3 and FLAC files. Cool. Removed negative void dweller trait, preventing players from genetically modifying species to avoid taking penalties. It was such a neat thing. Remove the hidden event to flip void dwellers traits. Made it so that only organics get taxed for the growth discourage decision. Science can no longer choose to comply with staying out of the war in heaven. Fixed lithoid craters being removed when terraforming into hive worlds. Fixed an unlocalized tooltip in the bowel event chain. Made it so Calamitous Birth can't stack multiple lithoid craters or buried lithoids. Fix for typo in Sanctuary of Repose building tooltip. Fixed it so that if you ever reforge your Doomsday homeworld, it will no longer have the Doomsday modifier. Gestalts will now quickly stamp out crime on conquered planets. Made it so nanites can't ever spawn on terraformable worlds. Made it so that a shielded planet won't show up in the event art when you pacify a habitat. Shorten the Voidborn description so that it fits inside the Ascension perk UI. Fixed messenger project not being visible on galaxy map. Ah, yes. City sizes on planetary view now increase faster to account for recent changes to pop growth. Cool. Replaced certain parts of localization which were plain strings with appropriate localization references. Point defense will no longer ignore missiles if strike craft are present on the battlefield. Oh my goodness. Okay, good. It's good. It's good. Fix non-Gestalt empires from being able to colonize with Gestalt pops while in a federation. Fixed it not being possible to issue move orders to explored and surveyed systems while having only science ships selected. Fixed some interface elements using hard-coded strings rather than translated text. Made the event The Cube more Gestalt-friendly. If you swap from organic to artificial pop assembly or vice versa during mid-assembly, you now lose all progress in that assembly. Makes sense. Fixed you finding an encryption key on your own empire again. Yeah, we had that. Fixed target uplink computer effect not applying to defense platforms. Added weightings which were missing from the Fanatical Purifier's name parts list. Addressed issues with synchronized localization entries for pop faction names. The various faction names now use the correct strings and may be rendered in simplified Chinese even. Contact report. Remnants event now happens when you encounter ruined megastructure. Fixed Ministry of Culture displaying the wrong job description for machine empires. Updated the job priority tooltip to be more clear. Made it so the Earth Custodianship isn't locked behind the Immanuel DLC. Addressed issues with various synchronized log entries for empire names, random names for empires including hive minds, necrophages, fanatical purifiers, and corporate authorities now use the correct strings and may be rendered in simplified Chinese. Ascended synthetic spiritualists will no longer outlaw their own rulers. Fix the wrong event text being displayed for the Grassy Militia anomaly event. Claims distant cost modifier now considers wormholes, even if borders are closed. Updated first contact protocols tooltips to more accurately reflect the effects. Improved consistency in map mode names, nice. Fixed an instance where crisis factions couldn't reach their offensive targets and got stuck. Reinforcing fleets will now arrive and attempt to merge even if the target fleet is in combat. Yeah, I really like that. Fixed jobs without employment caps being listed as X employed out of -1 available slots in job breakdown tooltip. Good. Sprawling slums tooltip changed now accurately reflects what the deposit actually does on clearing. Fixed repealing resolutions not working as expected. Repealing the 4th resolution under the mutual defense category now makes proper reference to the castigation proclamation rather than the military readiness act. Fixed the prioritized and deprioritized indicators on a pop job assignment icons blocking mouse input. Fixed colony designations, including preception pops, when evaluating pop limitations for the potential trigger. Fixed crash when using the add pops. Corrected capitalization in descriptive text for organic sanctuaries and organic paradises. Fixed several issues related to planets displaying negative available jobs. Yeah, that was very often. Fixed auto-pause not working for anomalies if auto-unpause was enabled. Fixed the on the shoulders of giants origin, sometimes starting you off in a solar system with too many planets. I've seen that happening, it was crazy. For the AI though, we didn't get it ourselves. Rebalanced likelihood of certain rare events from occurring. Starting with a Void Dweller or Shattered Ring origin in combination with a Reanimator Civic now starts your empire off with a Dread encampment. Thankfully. Fixed it not being possible to enact the Create Resort World decision after repealing it. Fixed cases, for example lithoid necrophages, where species would repeatedly start assembling or growing and then cancel after the next monthly tick. Fixed some cases where necrophages would pause regular pop growth during purging. Wow, these issues. Fixed issues with the portrait tooltip in Empire creation sometimes being empty or containing empty lines. Fixed the randomized ruler name button not always being enabled even though the requirements for it were met. Fixed it being possible to open DLC landing pages during hot join and breaking the UI flow. Okay. Fixed template list in Fleet Manager sometimes getting stuck in a scrolled state when a template was removed. Oh, I had that. That was pesky. Industrial worlds and industrial habitat designations no longer attempt to remove foundry drone jobs for rogue servitors. They now target the fabricator jobs. Fixed construct mining station tooltip showing maintenance on energy mining stations. Fixed pops sometimes staying in jobs that no longer existed after colony designation was changed. Hive minds now perceive the Living Sea event with bespoke event text rather than seeing the same events which are granted to regular non-machine empires. Fixed the go-to button for the unit lost event. Made it so diplomatic corpse ridiculed expires after 3,600 days. Forge and factory world designations now remember that a third tier of the buildings exist. Nice. Fixed missing strings of random names for supremacist and technologist pop factions. Fixed the icon for picking a colony designation being a robotic cow. Also made the robotic cow be used correctly for machine fringe planets. Humiliated modifier now has a negative icon. Yay! Leisure districts no longer provide housing for rogue servitors. Tooltips for organic sanctuary buildings and leisure districts for rogue servitors have additional information about their jobs. Made it so you cannot stack multiple missing tree of life modifiers by trading systems. Updated the tooltips of the Ministry of Culture to be more appropriate for gestalts. Made it so the infested world counter correctly updates when destroying a system with a Star Eater. Reworded lithoid rare resource traits to be clearer to the player. Rebalanced the amount of pops required to gain certain event jobs. Event unit lost now makes proper reference to the affected fleet. Fixed Mars missing terraforming candidate when Sol spawns naturally. Cool. Machine world preference now uses the appropriate icon. Fixed some consistency issues where discovery traditions were called exploration in French. Fixed tooltip for collective reasoning tradition. Fixed various instances of an invalid apostrophe glyph appearing in localized text. Oh no! Fixed it being impossible to communicate with caravaneers in certain circumstances. I had that. That was really... Fixed exploitable planets trigger always returning false and its tooltip. Made tooltips for invalid species traits highlighted in red in Empire creation. Fixed repair fleet orders not being carried out to completion if placed in a queue. Good. Implemented unused icons for Titanship components. Nice. Fixed uncolonized habitats mysteriously turning into shattered worlds when subjected to Star Eaters or the Aetherophasic engine. Nice. Fixed DLC icons being accessible in multiplayer Empire selection. Adjusted a response string for spiritualists upon completion of first contact, preventing a name reference from exceeding its bounds. Fixed a missing log string if your request to form a federation timed out. Fixed reference to tiles in collateral damages tooltips. As death cults, you no longer lose effects from active sacrifices if you temporarily cease to have any mortal initiates, for example by sacrificing them all. So you won't lose your effect right after the sacrifice. Fixed event spawned leaders lacking certain traits they should have had from their species characteristics, such as psionic and erudite. Fixed modifiers. Oh yeah, event spawned. Yeah, that's so good. It's so good that this is finally fixed. It has been in there so long and it was so annoying. Good, good, good. Fixed modifiers to district build speed not being applied to tooltips when you choose to build them. Fixed academic privilege living standards tooltip missing some crucial information on what it does. Plus 10% pop research output. Fixed certain traditions such as machine synchronicity tradition integrated preservation only taking effect after some delay or upon reload. Yeah, quite a couple of things were fixed through reload, and sometimes the reload also messed up tooltips bigly. Fixed some issues with life finds a way when not doing what the tooltip said. Fixed misleading tooltip of the Oracle Nexus event, clarified some matters in the Memorialist Civic tooltip. AI-controlled slaver guilds now should colonize planets. Fixed a rare issue where you could have a ±1 skill bonus in the first contact skill tooltips. Cleared planets and asteroid belt from the Shattered Ring solar system. Fixed the wrong ethics reference in Polish localization. Made the tradition Faith in Science have a less misleading tooltip. Fixed leader class skill modifiers applying to multiple or all leader classes instead of just the one they were meant to apply to. Fixed traditions that refund you costs of demolished buildings to properly refund you if you manually demolish or downgrade buildings using the planet interface. All colony designations of the appropriate type will now gain benefits from resolutions such as environmental ordinance waivers. Fixed buildings with a queued upgrade in progress being counted twice towards building count limits. It's no longer possible to shift criminals to worker jobs by manually prioritizing the worker job. That's cool. Fix it being possible to retain species rights that had been made invalid by a change in government type or civics. Good, good, good. This is finally in. Oh, made it so the hologram planet anomaly no longer can spawn on planets with already existing dig sites. Sweet, the totalitarian faction will now be happy if you have the Slaver Guild Civic. Makes sense. Agrarian Idle Civic now properly adds 2 farming districts to your homeworld. Purging every primitive on a planet now removes the Stellar Culture Shock modifier. Makes sense. It's still cruel. The ruler of the Galactic Imperium is no longer blocked from getting the Subjugation War goal or Casus Belli when they kindly offer Protectorate status to another empire. Hive worlds no longer have access to both the Forge world and the Hive world Foundry colony designation. Upon invading a Kettling primitive world, the associated special project will now be removed from your situation log. Fixed Fungoid research station model to remove the hole in cylinder. Passing Space Amoeba Protection Act resolution no longer allows you to pass the Tiyanki Conservation Act again. Passing either the Tiyanki Conservation Act or the Tiyanki Pest Control will now fulfill the Pass Resolution Galactic Focus. Fixed cases where the cooldown for finding archaeology sites in quick succession would be triggered even though no archaeology site was found. Oh yeah, fixed you getting unsuitable arc sites in the L cluster. Void Dwellers are now correctly given starting resources depending on species and ethics. Fixed not being able to revoke nominated galactic market plans if the relocation vote was ongoing. If Shard is defeated, the dragon, and the relevant event chains will be removed from all other nations. Yeah, so there's no double rubricators. The what separates us event will no longer fire if the other species are robots. Added a more negative icon to the failed savior modifier. The shifting sands event now properly gives a boost to physics research. Lost to bureaucracy event will no longer create planetary features out of thin air when you clear the blockers spawned. Reintroduced gaining menace from turning a world into a tomb world via bombardment. Fixed defense platforms not being destroyed when dismantling a starbase. Modified mesh to resolve Z-fighting between ringworld sections. Enclave text boxes now reset correctly between messages. Fixed an issue where you could take in Carabinier pops even if your policies would automatically purge them. Fixed merchant skills not giving enough jobs from the Imperial Palace building. Dimensional horror now shows on the galaxy map. Repeal crisis resolutions are no longer missing an icon. Fixed a bug that allowed you to gain menace by repeatedly vassalizing and releasing the same empire. Oh god. Fixed it being possible to open ship details for strange vessels via the fleet manager. Added missing icon to the study hive mind drones modifier. Fixed a case where the third bowel arc site would not spawn. You now gain visibility on the systems where you know the next Bowel or Throny arc site will be if you have never been there before, rather than having to guess where they are. Fixed army transport fleets, sometimes forgetting fleet stands and control group information when embarking. Land appropriation and automatic resettlement now respect whether a species is allowed to live on the planet. For example, won't resettle organics onto machine worlds. Reanimators is now fully incompatible with the synthetic ascension, rather than just quietly doing nothing as before. Prosperity traditions, interstellar franchising and public works, plus hive and machine variants, are now fully informative of which districts they provide boosts to. Unemployed lithoids will no longer move back to a doomed homeworld through auto-migration, even if there are plenty of good jobs and housing available. Can planet receive auto-migration added to game rules? Notifications for refused peace offers are now properly removed when a war has ended. Fixed various error log messages relating to crisis objectives, along with several edge cases where the rewards were not granted when they should have been. Stopped the automatic picker for assembling species from picking obsolete species with fewer traits. Fixed lithoids, using biological pop growth modifiers to determine whether they should be more likely to be picked as the next species to be grown. Fixed a case where a fallen empire could send you multiple demands to change your ways if you didn't answer them fast enough. Fixed pop self-modification chain from pitting modified species against modified species. Aha. Vassals created by the Galactic Sovereign no longer believe that they are also Galactic Sovereigns. There can be only one Sovereign. Fix the too long string cutting off invader power values in ground combat view in French. Fix an issue where destroying the contingency's final world with a Star Eater would not properly end the contingency crisis. Oh yeah, imagine having been there, having done that. Oh my goodness me. Updated numbers in espionage operation role tooltip to show correct information. Fix an issue where nomads would keep asking for a planet over and over before establishing communications. Thought enforcement tech is now researchable with the Utopia DLC. Fixed a crash upon mousing over a system with planets in as an observer. Fixed a couple of edicts having wrong deactivation cost. The tooltip when you can't reinforce a fleet shouldn't duplicate the cause. Fleets can be reinforced even if one ship type in the fleet can't be built. Adjusted the term used in French to refer to empires who oppose galactic community resolutions. Further fixes to the end of the Cyberx precursor chain. Oh yes, please. Fix these things. Added defines to support diffuse color as emissive rather than player color for skinned as well as static models. You can no longer invite someone you're at war with to join your side in a new war. At war against to join your side in a new war. Yeah, that's odd. That's one of the types of bugs that also happened in things like Europa Universalis or something some time ago. Fix it being possible to get multiple Imperial cores via certain war goals releasing new empires. Corrected opinion text placement in the declare war view. Grammar fixes to anomaly event adrift and event the discovery of alien life assimilator variant. The Manifesti faction should no longer reform after it has disbanded, either through suppression or lack of popularity. Fixed several cases where the Voltown, Yucht, First League, Aresian and Cybrex precursor chains would not end properly if someone else found the homeworld first. Fixed the Research Institute building not properly converting to planetary supercomputer when conquered by Gestalt empires and vice versa. Yeah, I had that. And you could basically double your bonus by keeping the buildings. Fixed auto-resettlement for Void Dweller habitats and certain other planets. Needs a new save though. Fixed a typo in the Ruined World archaeology chain. Fixed a spelling error in the Restored Warship event. Fixed excessive unemployment caused by the cave cleaner job being too attractive. Fixed an issue where branch office value tooltips could be displayed based on the wrong branch office owner. Branch office value generated from criminal jobs for criminal syndicates is now properly shown in the tooltip for branch office value. Fixed a typo in Operatives Toe the Line. Fixed crash on sector colony development update. Fixed missing tooltips for increase-decrease buttons in monthly trade view. Hyperlane registrar should now be unlocked with the correct technology. Hive minds can no longer assemble the null hive fobs from spawning pools. The colonizable planet icon should no longer disappear when a ship leaves an unsurveyed system. Victorious ground troops will no longer embark automatically if there are hostile military fleets present in the system. Very helpful. So, stay at the planet. Starbase defense platforms can no longer be upgraded while the starbase is engaged in combat. Fixed fleet is being dictated by the first ship in the fleet instead of the slowest one. Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. That little fix is so good. I mean, they should fix more behavior in fleets. You know what I mean. Firing, range extension, charging in for the kill. Updated German translation for Archimeter. Fixed the typo in Hahn's species name. Fixed a few German text overlaps. Fixed broken text references in Pirate Haven Destroyed event. Fixed planetary deposit interfaces not showing triggered modifiers as icons. Fixed jump distance counting not always finding the shortest path. Fixed cases where event options with random effects were often not as random as they should be. Updated a couple of neural slug events for hive mind empires. When you play as the Commonwealth of Man, the U and E will now always correctly spawn again. Nice. So that's the new update. I hope all of us will enjoy it. I certainly will. Thank you for watching and happy gaming to you. That's the whole glory of it. Have a great time until next time and happy gaming. This is Immanuel Can signing out. See you soon.